Hey, this is Charles Onyet, and I'm here talking about Guild Wars 2 as part of my ongoing review and progress for IGN. I've talked a lot about gameplay so far, and crafting, and how leveling works, and how ArenaNet has dealt with kind of level scaling between zones. And I actually have a level 80. I've managed to level up to 80. It took about 120 hours according to my game clock. So not too long. I guess in MMO terms, probably in real life terms, that's kind of a long time, but you know, that's part of the job and something I was actually happy to do because from what I've played so far, the game is really good. What I wanted to concentrate on in this particular review in progress entry is the Black Lion Trading Company and how monetization works in this game. So, I mean, you may have seen over-enthusiastic message board posts or Twitter posts saying, you know, Guild Wars 2 is free-to-play. It's not a free-to-play game. You have to buy the game. You make a one-time purchase to actually buy the game, like you would with, you know, any normal product. There's no subscription fee, though. There is a microtransaction system, so that's what I'm looking at right now. This is the Black Lion Trading Company. You can buy gems in-game, and as you can see here, they're not cheap. You buy, you know, in these increments here, and you buy portions for preset amounts, and then you can put that towards buying cosmetic items like, like a baseball hat. Actually, the hat is free. That's a celebration hat. You can see 0 gems here. You can buy aviator sunglasses. These are in the style category. Boxing gloves, you know, hipster glasses, top hats, sailor's beanie, I don't know. And it's like, this stuff, it's like, okay, I guess. I don't know why you would want to buy this, considering, you know, it kind of breaks the cohesiveness of of the fictional world. I don't know why, if you're a high fantasy fan, you would want to be like, oh yeah, give me some totally real world aviator sunglasses. I mean, a lot of parts of Guild Wars 2 are goofy anyway, so maybe it does fit in some bizarre sense, but it feels completely out of place to me. I don't like those style items. I also haven't seen anyone running around with boxing gloves yet, so maybe that's a good thing. But paying money for real gems can also get you some more useful stuff. So there are these transmutation stones you can buy that basically swap the appearance of an item with stats. So you can always, if you have an item you really like but it has crappy stats, you can take the stats on a better item and basically put it on that item so that you can always look the way you want to without having to sacrifice statistics. And then there are 2 versions of this. This one is up to level 79 items, and then the more expensive one, of course, is for all items. So this is for, you know, basically 80 stuff. Yeah, usable on all item levels. And then you get stuff like you'll find locked chests out in the world, and so you can buy keys to unlock them. They'll have special items in them. You can actually also find keys out in the world. So I've picked up keys through things I've done while questing, so you don't necessarily need to buy these. Same thing with tournament tickets. You can get that by participating in PvP matches. You can also get boosters. So, you know, experience boosters, karma boosters, kill streak experience boosters, glory boosters, all this stuff. So that's kind of useful. I could see the point in buying that. Same with like mini pets, or just, you know, kind of a nice little extra, I guess. Salvage kits, so that you can always recover upgrades when you break down an item to get to its component parts. Instant repair canisters are pretty nice, and then ways to remotely access Black Lion traders and, you know, bank access, things like that. Pretty useful in that regard, much better than boxing gloves in my mind. But you're not forced into buying all this. This is all optional stuff that I'm detailing here. So this is just kind of in the background. If you want these convenience items, you can take care of that by purchasing the gems. You can also actually, and this is the way it gets around having to, you know, actually pay money for these gems, if you're able to build up enough in-game currency, so enough gold from, you know, vendoring items or participating in events and things like that. You can trade gold for, and I am not rich right now. I'm poor. I am very poor. But if I were to trade, oh, whoops, I did it wrong. Oh God. Trade gold for gems. So trade, you know, 20 silver. That'll get me 74 gems. That's not a whole lot. I mean, it's kind of expensive. but there is a way to get gems without entering your credit card information. So you're not only forced to pay real money to acquire gems. If you're able to farm up enough virtual currency, you can still get a hold of them. And conversely, as you just saw me screw up, you can trade gems for gold. So you can basically, by purchasing gems, you can directly purchase in-game currency. If there's something like, well, actually, I will just go over to this part, which is a part I don't like, a part where I feel like I was actually forced, in a way, not directly forced, but kind of forced to pay for things like expanding inventory space, which is why these major runes of holding that you need to craft new bags and things are just outrageously expensive, just completely ridiculously priced. But you could directly purchase those essentially by purchasing gems and then converting that into in-game currency. So one of the issues I have with the system, all the stuff I've described so far has been non-essential, but inventory space is a big issue in-game as I've leveled from 1 to 80. It's been consistently a problem as I basically try to figure out where to put all the stuff I get, because I have all of these sigils that I pull off of items that give me bonuses. I have all of these crafting materials, such as these cooking components that aren't collectibles. So there's this huge collections bank that will basically store all of your base components for crafting disciplines. But then there are intermediate steps to some of the crafting. So you make like bowls of roux and jars of tomato sauce for cooking, for instance, that won't go back in there. You actually have to put those in your inventory. So that is taking up space. And when you start out, you only have one bank slot, and you do not have this many additional slots in your personal inventory. So I spent almost $40 essentially expanding the space. So I have more shelves in my bank. I have more places to put bags so that I can actually run around and craft properly. Because one of the annoying things, particularly with cooking, is that in order to discover new recipes, which is here, I'm not actually at the cooking station, I'm at the armor smithing station, but to discover new recipes, you need to have the items that you're kind of experimenting with, which I'm doing here, you can see an example of, in your active inventory. So you need to pull them out of this collections bank and put them in your inventory, which for cooking in particular, you need a lot of items active to mix and match and see what works where, because it's actually the recipes are pretty unpredictable, whereas for armor smithing it's pretty formulaic. It's actually kind of boring to level armor smithing just because it's the same thing every time. There isn't a lot of surprise there. Cooking, there is a lot of surprise. I love the cooking system, but you really do need a lot of inventory space to really make that work. Otherwise you just spend so much time transferring stuff over here, opening up the discovery pane, figuring out it doesn't work. You know, maybe you're missing out on a particular combination just because you didn't have the right items active in your inventory. So it just becomes this huge mess that's just this huge hassle to deal with, particularly at higher levels once you just have a ton of different materials sitting in here. So again, I mean, the game doesn't force you to buy more inventory space, but you kind of need more inventory space, or it's just going to be this, it's just going to be a huge inconvenience. Now, one of the reasons that was such a pain for me initially is because the trading post was not working. So the trading post is something else. This is basically the auction house where you can, you know, sell your components to other players. They'll bid on them, they'll buy them. You can make money this way. You can find low-priced items and flip them. Unidentified dyes seem to be a really popular item and actually sell for quite a bit, which I did not realize. I've just been learning them all on my character, and maybe I should have been selling them. But yeah, this is actually up and functioning now. So maybe, you know, it wasn't really as big a deal as it should have been about the inventory space, because I could have just sold some stuff through here, made some money this way, then transferred that money into gems, which I could have then used to purchase inventory space, because as you can see, you can buy basically more slots and things like that, particularly for the bank, which here, let me just show off how expensive that is. I think it's 600 gems to get more bank space. Let me double check here. If I go down here, yeah, 600 gems. So, I mean, you remember it was, what, 20 bucks for, no, I don't want to do that, mostly because I don't have gems. So, I mean, it's pricey. It's pretty pricey. So you can see that's a big chunk of my $20 that's being taken out there. So that's something that I was having problems with. Maybe as I continue to play now in a post-80 world, or on my post-80 character to see what's out there, you know, that'll become less of a deal as I use the trading post. And since I've been talking about pricing, you know, that's something that hopefully doesn't concern me more now as a level capped player. I've completed all of the story. You can see I don't have a personal story quest up here. So now I'm kind of into the end game, I guess, as it were, of Guild Wars 2, and this just happened. So I'm just figuring out, you know, what there is to do in the world, and so there's still plenty of places I haven't explored. I've tried to explore as much as I could while I was leveling from 1 to 80, and these are kind of the end zones down here, which interestingly are very different from the starting zones in that they don't have heart quests. So there are no more heart NPCs to kind of run around and do boring stuff for. There are only events. There are a lot of events, and the enemy density in these areas is very packed. So let me just go over here. I'm gonna transfer over. This is a level 80 only zone, and it's tough. It's tough to run around here without just getting harassed by a bunch of different spellcasters who have all sorts of roots and snares who make it very difficult to run past them. It seems to be the type of zone that you definitely want to run around in a group with. I've found the events in these later zones tend to be more challenging. Bosses have more punishing attacks and things like that, especially in the group events. So that you actually do have to be a little bit more mindful of what is happening here. Is there a helicopter? There is a helicopter. There we go. So you have to be a little bit more mindful about your gameplay behavior, because the earlier events, I mean, they're really cool to look at, but actually playing them just turns into kind of a spammy skill fest where it's just everyone's just basically there to enjoy the fireworks of the event, but nobody's necessarily participating or having to deal with any interesting really gameplay or make really intelligent use of their skill sets, as long as you have, you know, enough players there, which in my experience in the early zones, you know, that's always been the case. It's never been that difficult to get people to show up. But in these zones, it seems to be a little bit more difficult because there's just so much going on. And like, I can go over to defending this Priory Scholar. It looks like somebody's actually over there. So I was talking about enemy density. I can't really run around on this map for very far without aggroing somebody. But you can also see I'm still earning experience post 80. So it's not like your leveling just stops. You will keep leveling up, and I believe you just earn skill points per level up so that you can continue unlocking skills. My slot skills here, I haven't unlocked all of them yet, so I'm still, because the elite skills are very expensive, so I'm still building up skill points to try and unlock some more of those and see what other powerful abilities I can use. And some of the elite skills are really powerful, as you would expect, such as this one, my Tome of Courage, that gives me really, really powerful heal spells, such as this Pacifism, which pacifies foes, dazing them for 3 seconds. So we'll just kind of, you can see doves fly out there, and everyone just kind of stays still. And Light of Deliverance here is just crazy. It fully heals up to 5 nearby allies with that kind of AoE blast. I can only use it once per summon, but then I have this area of effect heal and some other bonuses. But yeah, that in particular in dungeon encounters seems to be really good. Anyway, I'm just going around doing, you know, random event questing here. What I can also do as an 80, I have all of the dungeons unlocked. So there are a bunch of different dungeons around the world. I've done some of the story modes, but they're still explorable to go back into. So, I mean, for the end dungeon over here, Era, not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but then I have, you know, all of the other dungeons, Twilight Arbor, which I've run. And here, let me pull back a little bit. Here we go. The Catacombs, that's the first one, and then, you know, some other stuff like Honor of the Waves, I still haven't run yet, and Crucible of Eternity. So there are a bunch of different dungeons here to jump into and try to get the unique armor sets associated with them through the explorable mode. So there are the more challenging encounters there. I will say, even in story mode... Oh, hey, I made it. Nice. I wasn't even paying attention. Oh my god, this is zombie chicken. It's a veteran zombie chicken. This is pretty crazy. But yeah, so you do get those kind of 5-man dungeon encounters to go over again and again and try to get some cool looking gear. And with those transmutation stones, you know, you can ensure you're always wearing the stuff that you want to in terms of the look of it. But there's also the world versus world mode that I could jump back into for endgame content, as well as this mode to continue going through here and participating in events to try and bump up my skill points. So that's something I'm going to focus on for continuing coverage, is just, you know, checking out what the end game's like, going through explorable mode in a few dungeons and seeing how challenging that is compared to story mode. I will say that in my experience so far, Ascalonian Catacombs was in story mode was actually by far the most challenging dungeon overall. The Twilight Arbor final boss fight was really difficult, but it did not compare to the overall level of challenge in Ascalonian Catacombs story mode. Even more so than the final dungeon, which was longer, but by the way, the high-level berries are called Omnom berries. Some comedy here. They've got jokes at ArenaNet. But yeah, the Ascalonian Catacombs was actually the most challenging. But anyway, I know the real dungeon challenge is the explorable mode, so that's something I'll be checking out moving forward. Overall, I mean, it's surprising how much content is actually in this game in terms of the personal story. The personal story missions go on for quite some time. The later ones get really involved. There's a lot of stuff to do. Unfortunately, some of the later ones tend to be pretty buggy too. So enemies would be getting stuck in walls. There would be pathfinding issues with NPCs I was supposed to escort into places. So that wasn't great. And there were some encounters in the story missions that I was playing by myself that were just surprisingly challenging. Perhaps tuned a little too challenging for what they should have been. But the amount of story there is still impressive, even if the characters, really the whole way through, I never really ran into a personality that I was particularly drawn to or really identified with. They just kind of did their thing. They served their purpose for the story. The overall structure of the story is impressive in how it kind of branches out and then comes back in again to these big group climactic events. So the rhythm of the story is good. It's just the personalities tend to be pretty wooden and stale for the most part. You know, there are some characters you run into consistently throughout the adventure, and actually the story modes of the dungeons, it's impressive how those are also tied into kind of the overall arc of the story. I like how it's all structured. I just don't necessarily care about anyone, well, not anyone, but I care about most of the people involved. Just kind of show up and explain who they are, what they want to do, and that's it. And you don't really get much of a sense of personality there. You just get a sense that, oh, hey, this person is here to make this particular thing happen within the story. So even when some characters, you know, don't make it and some characters do, I'm not necessarily cheering for them. But there is a ton of content, so you will find story missions very regularly throughout the entire leveling process. And even once you hit 80, there's still a huge series of missions. Well, not huge series. There are a number of missions that happen only at level 80, leading up to kind of the climactic encounter. So that's my experience so far, an overview of some of the payment systems. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the inventory space issue, but maybe, again, that's just because I wasn't really using the trading post properly. But I don't really feel like ArenaNet is forcing me to pay, even at level 80 so far, but I'll keep investigating that as I continue to go and take part in some of the quote-unquote endgame content. Even though a lot of it is accessible from you know, the beginning, so you can do, you know, structured PvP, you can do world versus world combat, all from the start. So hitting 80 doesn't really feel like as much of an achievement. Hey, an opal, nice. As much of an achievement necessarily as it would in other MMOs, just because I've had access to a lot of that content already. It's just the dungeons is kind of, I guess, the major unlock, as well as these zones that ditch the heart quests in favor of big events and things like that. So I'll continue providing updates as I keep playing. Hopefully I can have a full review soon once I feel comfortable with what's going on here. I feel like there's more to see at this point. So for more updates on Guild Wars 2, keep checking back with IGN.